You have to make education a priority regardless of your circumstance. I had a father break down and cry because he was telling his son, I don't want you to have to feel what it's like to be all alone in that cell and have to pretend like it don't bother you. What we're really trying to get away from is the school or prison pipeline. The projection for how many prisons that we're going to need 20, 30 years down the line is based on third and fourth grade test scores, reading levels now.
You're a public school operating as a private school. Why don't more public schools take that same approach? So many young men during a critical stage in their development end up in jail or end up taking the wrong route in life. But today, our guest has a remedy for that. He has a school called YMLA, which stands for Young Men's Leadership Academy. Please welcome Principal Marc A. Medley.
Man, I'm just glad to be here. I feel like it's an honor to be here.
We appreciate you coming through. I know you're a busy man doing big things.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, I'm grateful and thankful to God to be able to do what I do.
Indeed. So why an all-boys school? Why not co-ed? Is it because of distractions or tell us why?
That's one of them. Distractions is one of them. But it's the opportunity for the boys to focus. Boys and girls, research has shown, think and learn differently. Matter of fact, our curriculum is based on a book titled How Males Think, or Teaching the Male Brain. All right, the title of the book is Teaching the Male Brain. And our curriculum, when the school started in 2015, was based on that book. And in there, it gets into how boys function, think, how they view education, how they interact. And so we built our curriculum at YMLA around that. Boys are competitive. I'm not saying anything that I'm saying does not say that girls are not, but research has shown boys are competitive. Boys like hands-on projects. Research has also shown that they will perform better without distractions. So we have a combination of it being single gender as well as smaller size. So that combination is powerful because it gives us an opportunity to really kind of do things a little bit differently than what we might do in the co-ed setting.
So tell us about the size of the classroom, the ratio, and why you choose to have a smaller size.
When the school was put in design, or when the school was designed, actually what we looked at was we really didn't want any class to be beyond 15 students. There's one class per grade level. So the school goes from grades 3 to grade 8, and the intent was not to go beyond 15 students. This is my 6th year at the school. I started in 2019, right before the pandemic. And since that time, we have yet to have every class to have 15 students. Some classes may have 10, others may have 9. We've had 12. This year, we did actually have 6th grade, which was 19. That's the first time since I've been there that we actually went over the 15. But the other classes were way under capacity. So we're talking, my goal is usually to get to 100 students. I haven't gotten there yet. I usually average around 70 to 75. So you're talking 6 to 8 kids to the class. That gives the student, that gives the teacher really an opportunity to focus because your average class size in your regular school is 25 to 30 students. I shared with you earlier, the way the school is designed, in order for a student to get in there, they have to apply, have 2 letters of recommendation. We look at their grades. They don't have to be a straight A or a perfect student, but at the same time, we're not designed to be a behavior school either. When the school first opened, it was a lot of confusion around that. A lot of people thought it was what we call an alternative middle school or alternative school. If your child was a behavior problem, or if you were giving the school or the principal a lot of issues, we're going to send you over to YMLA. YMLA is not that type of school. YMLA is a leadership school. So it also gives us an opportunity to focus on leadership principles with the boys. So the small class side, the type of student we're looking for, like I said, is not necessarily the gifted and talented student, but it's not the behavior problem issue either. It gives a student that might have an opportunity or would be able to do it, but they're being held back by the distractions. They're being held back by size. They're being held back that they may be a good student, but now they have 29 other students around them that the teacher has to deal with and can't deal with them. When you're in a class with 5 or 6 kids, the teacher can deal with all 5 or 6, regardless if you're a behavior issue or not. So that's the thinking behind when the school was put together.
Yeah, I love that thinking, man. And just me reflecting back when I was in school, I definitely could see how the way you have your school designed would have benefited me. So I hope that those boys know how blessed they are to have that opportunity. Why not an all girls school?
That's on the table. Now, it's since this school, like I said, been in existence in Paterson Public School since 2015. Throughout that time, the same discussions have come up. They just have not been able to implement and execute it yet. However, the same thinking or principles would apply. The girls would have an opportunity to focus, no distraction from the boys. Again, the same thing. If they put it together in that same way, it would work for girls as well. We were talking earlier prior to coming on the air in terms of in Paterson Public Schools, they're somewhere roughly between 26 to 30,000 children. My school only has 50 of those, or 100, even if I take the high side, 100 out of those 26 to 30,000 students. So the prevailing thought would be you need to consider yourself privileged out of 26 to 30,000 children to be one of 50. And you really need to use that to your advantage.
Yeah. And how do you measure your metrics to success, so to speak?
Excellent question, because my metrics is not necessarily limited to just standardized test scores. Young Men's Leadership Academy is a part of Paterson Public Schools. If you come in there, if you visit us, it feels like a charter school or either a private school. Matter of fact, we tease all the time and say your child is getting private school education for public school prices. All right, because as we know, public school you don't pay other than your taxes. But we operate it just like a private school or just like a charter school. The main metric being a public school is the standardized test. That is really kind of what we're based and judged on. We're based on how we do, how many kids that you have that come up proficient on that test, how many kids come up approaching, how many kids come up not met, how many kids, your percentages. And Paterson Public Schools district wide, in general, they're a district in need of improvement. So out of those 26 to 30,000 children, you don't get a large percentage of proficiency, even though that's what we're based on. Now, yes, as an employee of Paterson Public Schools, I am measured the same way as everyone else. But at the same time, in a school like mine, there are so many other things that we use as metrics, because some of those kids that come in there, had they not come to us, or if they not get into an environment like ours, if they stay into the big pool, could wind up going the other way. So for every child that we save from going the other way, that's a success. From every child that we have an opportunity to impact, that will see a guest speaker like you come in and say, I want to be like him. For every child that we get a chance to expose something that they may not have been exposed to in their larger setting, that's a measure of success. When I get parents coming into me saying, matter of fact, we were talking about it's not a behavior school, but I cannot tell you how many parents look to us that want their child to be in it because they know their son is a behavior issue. And they literally were looking us to be like miracle workers. Like, we've heard about the work that you're doing with boys, and we want you to do that for our son. So the measure of success is some of it we may not see until 10, 15, 20 years from now. But what we say is we have an opportunity to make these boys at this age to help them be better husbands and fathers down the line, that they're getting things here that, like, say, for example, and again, a lot of this that I'm talking about, we may have talked about prior when you were there. We teach manners in there. Manners are supposed to be taught at home. Manners are not, for the most part, in a larger school, you don't get an opportunity to take time to do that. All right. School my size, we can't, and the way we're structured, because we have a morning meeting. We start our day off with a morning meeting. In your larger schools, you don't get a chance to do that. So I have an opportunity to address the entire body every morning. The entire school body starts the day off with the principal, with a motivational message. And when we leave there, the last words they hear is our motto, go be great. That's when they leave out of the morning meeting. The last thing they hear from me is go be great. So our metrics of success is, yes, the standardized test scores. Yes, academics. It's also social emotional learning. It's also, it's an all boys school, but we teach how to treat women. You are going to respect our queens. All right. You're not going to disrespect our queens. When I first was assigned there, like I said, this is my 6th year. When I was first assigned there, I caught up with a couple of the kids over the summer, a couple of the boys. I said, tell me what you like or don't like about Young Men's Leadership Academy or YMLA. They talk about our mothers too much. I said, what do you mean they talk about it? Our classmates? All they do is talk about our mother. So, okay, I know how to fix that. The first day I got there, when the kids came, we were in another building, not in the one we're in now. We put a big circle, made the chairs in a big circle, and every student in the school sat in that circle. And we went through the expectations. And one of those expectations was we will respect our queens. And you need to understand every female that works in here, that's a queen. You also need to understand all the mothers, they're queens. So guess what? When you talk about your classmate's mother, who you disrespecting? Queen, absolutely. So if a child gets sent to my office, why are you down here? I talked about Mark's mother. Oh, did you? What did we say about disrespecting our queens? We're not supposed to disrespect. Well, what did you do when you talked about Mark's mother? I disrespected her. So we get a chance to address things like manners. Here we go. So, like I said, thank you, please, may I? When they come to Mr. Medley, can I go to the bathroom? Yeah, if you can walk. If your equipment works, your legs work, you know where the bathroom is. But what's your real question? What is it what you're asking me for? Then they get it. Oh, may I go to the bathroom? Ah, there we go. Can is ability. May is permission. All right. So we get into all that type of things. We were talking about time. We get into time there. Yes. I mean, yeah, I know this is a podcast, so I don't know what I can and can't say because I know how that it is about being on the air.
Keep it raw.
Oh, this is
It's
raw
called
success.
raw success.
There we go. All right. So if that's the case, I mean, there are certain terms because they need to understand the history of words. So they're like, you're not going to come in my school and you're not going to be calling each other nigger. You're not going to be coming up in there, yo, man, that's my nigga. Yo, man, nigga this. Yo, you should have seen that nigga. Oh, that nigga. Because we go into the history of the word nigga. So you need to understand whenever we were being called that, we were 3/5 of a human being. I don't know how you get 3/5 of a person, but you need to understand when we were being called that, we were 3/5 of a person. Now, I don't care how you spell it. Nigga, Nigger, Niggah, Nig. I don't care how you spell it. It's not cute.
That's right. And even you got some people that try to add some consciousness to it by saying it meant kings back in the day. Listen, because just so that you know, I'm with you. I took that word out of my vocabulary. I no longer use it. So I am definitely with you.
So we teach that, and they know. I mean, there's other things that you're just not going to do here as a part of this school. And we let the parents know this is the expectation up front. Matter of fact, next week when they come back, we have our meeting with the parents of expectations. These are the things your child will do. These are the things you will not do. All right. We're a uniform wearing school. So that I get it. Every day, all the uniforms may not be clean. They may have to wear different clothes or what have you. But again, we're teaching them not just for now, we're teaching them how to operate in society as they become African American and Hispanic young men, because the predominant group of my school is Hispanic and Black. I mean, I don't have any other, for the most part, I don't have any other children in the school. I have Black and Hispanic boys. As you know, we are targets in society. So that's the other thing we're trying to help them understand is we're trying to do everything we can to take that target off your back. Even with that being said, you still could wind up being one, but at least you will have been exposed and taught. We have an opportunity to talk to these boys, and you've seen the age group, the grades 3 to 8. We talk real talk with them. Raw talk, just like we're doing right now, is exactly what I do with them. I said, you are getting at an earlier age stuff I didn't hear till I was a grown man. Things that I did not hear till I was a grown man, you're getting in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So when you talk success, when the boys come back to me after they've graduated and they've been in high school and they come back, or if I hear their principal saying, there's something different about the boys you send me. Or if I hear the boys come back, you remember Mr. when you said, oh, yeah, you were right. Measure of success. Whenever I get a student that things that we're talking about that may have come in there and every other word was nigga this, nigga that, they're now telling their classmate, yo, man, you don't want to say that because like I'm into the psychological tricks in the mind. So I kind of, I work with, so every time they know if they happen to be in my presence and I hear the word nigga come out their mouth, I will loudly say, who? I can't do it in here because it'll echo, but I will loudly say who, and they hear that. And they know once they hear me say who real loud like that, oh, one of my classmates then said nigga. This is the funny part. I've gotten to the point now wherein if their classmate do it, I hear one of them go, who? Then I know. Because now they start policing themselves.
And that's true leadership, because a leader makes other leaders. So now the students are becoming leaders
Correct.
by, as you said, policing themselves. And it's so great that you're doing that, because even me, so I'm an X-ray tech, right? That's what I do full time. And I remember there was a time, I share the story a lot. What I saw somebody from the town, right, from Paterson, and he was doing the janitor. He was a janitor, and I was coming in to do an X-ray on a patient, and he was like, "Yo, my end." And so I smiled, gave him a handshake. Then I put him aside, and I was like, "Brother, don't call me that, especially in here, because if somebody else calls me that, I'm gonna respond differently with them." So it's number one, I say get rid of the word, but definitely, and I teach my children this too. I get it. You're gonna talk to your friends a certain way. You have to learn to adapt and turn it on and off. That's what society's about, being flexible with your thinking, not too flexible where you compromise your morals and principles, but definitely knowing what to turn on and off. And okay.
No, you can
Yeah.
because I'm gonna go with exactly what you just said. I'm gonna go with you.
Yeah, I did want to ask you, because you're from the city, and I think that that's great because you're from Paterson, and so you relate to the students on multiple levels. Number one, you look like them. Two, you're a man. Three, you're from the city that they're from. I wanted to ask you, as I was on my way here thinking about this interview, how did you not get caught up in any of the madness that even I got caught up in terms of, just hood stuff, becoming either a victim to drugs or a drug dealer or getting locked up? How did you avoid some of those pitfalls that your students are becoming prey to?
All right, to answer your question, so thank God, and my mom just passed away May 14th this
Sorry,
year.
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. My dad passed away April of 1985, but I had two wonderful parents. Their motto, as a kid, I mean, it was like drummed into us, was think for yourself. There were certain things me and my sister was and was not going to do because one, we were not going to misrepresent or embarrass the Medley name. They were not going to get somebody from the street or a teacher saying Mark did this or Marcy did that or what have you. So they were very clear on expectations. My father was an avid reader. That's where I took it from. I got it from him. I mean, he worked in a factory, would come home at 4:30. By 5:15, he was sitting down with Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, or reading The Spook Who Sat by the Door, or either Malcolm X biography, or reading something along those lines. So he was my first role model. That was my first thing. My mom, same thing in terms of, they instilled in me and my sister, again, standards, excellence. I mean, I grew up 2 blocks away from Eastside High School on Pearl Street. Literally 2 blocks over from Eastside High School. Matter of fact, when I went to high school, I could be there in like 3 to 5 minutes. All right. So there was certain things we could and could not do. I went to school 15 in terms of grammar school. To get from Pearl Street to school 15, the shortcut was to cut through Eastside High School. My parents were very clear. You will not be cutting through Eastside High School. You will walk, at that time it was called Graham Ave, now it's called Rosa Parks. You will walk around Rosa Parks to the school. If a fight or anything should break out, you will not stop and look at it. You will continue to walk. You will not get caught up. You will not do what the crowd says do. You will think for yourself. That was instilled in us from youth. Matter of fact, they signed my yearbook with remember what me and your dad always told you, think for yourself. I got my yearbook to this day. That signature of them saying that is still in there. And they put the think for yourself in quotes. So to answer your question, we were always taught to think for ourselves that regardless of what was or was not going on, that we knew what we were taught. And we knew you better think for yourself. Just because somebody's fighting, just because everybody's watching the fight, that don't mean you have to be stopping and watching. Just because your friend might be stealing out of the store, don't mean you have to be stealing out of the store. Just because your friend is doing this, that, and the other does not mean you have to do it. Now, what I do with my kids, and my parents were pretty much the same thing, is they would not go into school and say what Mark would or would not do. Like if the teacher said Mark did this, they wouldn't go in there, oh, my baby wouldn't do that. They took on like, well, we know what we taught Mark to do. I don't know what Mark will or will not do when he's not in my presence. We know what we taught him not to do. From the time I started school till I graduated high school, back to school night. My parents would come to back to school night. At the end of the conference with every teacher, my mother would say, now here's our number. If Mark gets out of line, you do what you need to do here and you give us a call, and when he gets home, we gonna do what we need to do there. At the time I went to school, teachers could tighten you up. All right. So each teacher had their thing. I had a second grade teacher, Miss Royster. She would put us in the closet. You acted out in her class, she put you in that back closet and closed the door. My third grade teacher, Mr. Zurich, you acted out in his class, he come twist your ear. I had a third grade teacher. She was my reading teacher, Miss Walden. Miss Walden was about 70 or 80 at that time. She spread your hand out and pop it with the ruler. Each teacher had their own thing. We can't do that now. We can't, in 2024, you can't do that. But back in the 70s, teachers could. So I was not stupid enough to be chastised or dealt with in school and then come home and get a spanking from my parents when I got home. I wasn't doing that because, see, people need to understand there's a difference between discipline and abuse. You know, back in my time, there was no such thing as calling DIFUS, especially from a child calling DIFUS on their parents. There was no such thing as that. So there's a difference between discipline and abuse. My parents disciplined, they did not abuse, but they were very clear on what their children were and were not going to do.
So you were given the instructions to think for yourself, right? And thinking for yourself seems like it should be such a natural thing. Why don't we or the common person think for themselves?
Because for the most part, we're in a society that conforms. It's real easy to conform. It's not always easy to stand out. It's interesting. The word is outstanding. If you break down the word outstanding, that means stand out from the crowd. That's why when somebody says, "Oh, he's outstanding," very few of us, we think we're outstanding, but we're not. When you get a crowd of kids that all of them wear white T-shirts and think they're being individual. It's like, you're not being an individual. The 500 kids in the school are wearing white T-shirts. You get a kid that's sagging and thinks he's making a statement. You're not making a statement. Yeah, you are making a statement, but it's the wrong statement. And why are you doing it? Because your partner is doing it. Why are you doing? So we're in a society that conforms. For those of us who do something different, we're the ones that's kind of ostracized. So that's why. And you have people who may think or who truly may want to think for themselves and do what they know is right, but they are too concerned about what their boys are gonna think. Yo, if I don't do this, I'm reading it again for whatever reason. I don't. Words are powerful, so I don't even got to read it and say my memory's going because I'm getting old. But I was reading the book. What's his name? He's the one that says you have to want success so much it's like breathing.
Eric Thomas.
Yes, that's it. Eric Thomas. I'm reading Eric's book now, and he talks about how he loved playing the violin. But he stopped playing the violin because his boys thought that, yo, man, why aren't you doing football? Why you ain't doing baseball? Why you ain't doing track? Yo, that violin for nerds. He said he put his dream down because of what he thought other people would think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And man, so you had amazing parents, two-parent household. They instructed you, they taught you, they led by example. There's that word leadership again. What happened? Why aren't there more parents doing that?
That's the $1 zillion question. Because, connecting this to what we do in schools, there are factors that school districts, superintendents, principals, teachers, aides, everyone, there are factors that we can't control. The major factor that we can't control is the home. The factor that has the most impact is the home. If we could get, and that's why, again, going back to school, the other part of this thing is relationship, relationship, relationship. What I do is I make sure I have a relationship with my parents as well as with my students, staff, so forth and so on. So when a child gets into some type of trouble or some type of, a misbehavior and the parent has to come in, we make it very clear. You need to understand this is not the home against the school against the home, because kids are very good at playing two ends against the middle. They will go home and tell the parent one story about the school and come to the school and tell the school another story about the parent. Right? So now the parent's thinking one thing, the school did that, and now they come to us saying something, your mom said that. Then when they come together, it's this battle. So we make it very clear, we're on the same team. We want the best interests for you. Once me and the parents partner like that, we're usually pretty good. Now, like I said, this assignment has been a wonderful assignment for what I'm about and what I'm trying to do. But I've had other assignments within the district of larger schools and much more challenging schools where it is or does become a battle between the home and the school. I've had a parent, and I won't use the explicitive, that the parent said to the child, but I had a parent stand right in front of me and tell the child, you don't have to listen to these MFers because they don't know what they're talking about. So I'm kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do with him now? Because his mother just told him that he don't have to listen to us. But once you get the parent on board to help them understand, this is for the best interest of your child. And it's not a judgment thing because you have a lot of single parent homes. You got and mom is doing it. And you have some dads who are doing it. So it's not a matter of judgment. It's the focus on education. You have to make education a priority regardless of your circumstance. Regardless if you're single dad, single mom, you didn't like school, you didn't like your teacher, you dropped out, you still have to, for your child, make it a priority. And I can't tell you how many parents I have had. I had a father break down and cry from his son because he grew up or he had been in and out of the juvenile detention center. That man sat in my office because he's telling his son, I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. I don't want you to have to feel what it's like to wait for a phone call once a week. I don't want you to have to feel what it's like to be all alone in that cell and have to pretend like it don't bother you. The man broke down in tears. This kid was a fourth grader. Once you get parents engaged like that, whether it's one parent or two parent, it won't matter. If the parent does not have or see education as a priority, then we have a struggle. All right. But so I was blessed with I always tell people we were kind of like the poor man's Cosby show. I didn't even know we were poor, but I had mom, dad, me and my sister. We had our own house. And as a matter of fact, we were the house on the block where all the kids went to when they had to get their bikes fixed or if they wanted to play ball or this, that, and the other. So it's not just about that. While that is a big part, it's where parents place the value of education.
Why don't more public schools take on your approach? You're a public school operating as like a private school. Why don't more public schools take that same approach?
Interestingly enough, that question has been asked by school board members. They're like, why can't we just duplicate what you do? A lot of it has to do with size. Because a lot of the same things that I'm doing or attempting to do with the small school, I have attempted to do with the larger school. It's just that you're dealing with a whole lot more people, a whole lot more stakeholders, a whole lot more homes versus in a private school. And the other thing is, again, we're considered a choice school. So normally what happens in a school district, especially like an urban school district such as a Paterson, you go to school closest to your house. That's called your home school. Then you have schools that are choice schools where you have to do something to get in. The parent is actively making a choice to send your child there, and the school is making a choice to accept you or not. So hence you get the interview process, you get letters of recommendation, you get the review of report cards, because I not only interview the parent, I interview the student too. The student has a certain set of questions that he has to answer, and then the parent has a certain set of questions that they have to answer. Right? So we're considered a choice school. So because we're a choice school, if you don't do, and this is where we're like a private school to a degree, if you do not do what you agreed to do whenever we decided to accept you, I can send you back to your home school. So unlike private school where we can kick you out altogether and we don't care where you go, in my particular school, I can say, you know what, this just is not working. You're going to have to go back to your home school. So that's why we can operate quasi-private charter in comparison to some of the other schools, because you have to, by law, have to go to school. You cannot kick a kid out of school. To a degree, I can, because I'm not kicking you out of school, but I'm sending you back to your home school.
So what are some of the qualifications that a child must have to be accepted by your school?
Well, again, like I said, we get letters of recommendation from the principal, from teachers, guidance counselor, whomever. We ask them questions in terms of character. Like we will ask them a question. Your friend comes to you and says, Mark, I didn't get a chance to do my homework last night. Let me copy yours. What do you do? We ask that question from the third grader to the seventh grader. And we assess based on their answer. Some very few will say that they would do it. Most of the kids say, I won't do it. We say, why? Then we get into, because it's wrong. Okay, good. Or they'll say it's cheating. Or they'll say, yo, I did my work, he should have done his. I mean, it's like, but we
So
we, we get a
certain
chance to talk
character.
character, right? We just to kind of, and they may or may not have, because it's not a matter of it has to be a perfect child. It's like there are some things we can work. So even if you happen to mess that question up, we still won't necessarily say, oh, he's not coming because he messed up question 7. No, but it does give us a feel for, what's your favorite subject in school? What's your least favorite subject in school? What do you like about coming to school most? What do you hate about coming to school most? So there's questions like that in the child questioning. For the parents, we're asking them, what is it like at home? Who's home with you? They might say, I live with my mother, I live with my grandmother, this dad is here, his dad is not in his life, but he comes and goes. We get a flavor for that. What's your philosophy on education? So we're asking the parent, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, where are you at in terms of, it's the most important thing. And parents will get real with you. You know what? I dropped out and I know what it's been like for me. So I don't want that for my son. So there's like maybe 8 questions for the parents and maybe 7 questions for the child that we ask. Then we kind of sync them up.
Yeah. For if you're having a direct message to parents right now, what do they need to do for their child to succeed, not only in education, but in life?
Okay, and please understand when I give this message, it is not meant to be judgmental. It is not meant to be sarcastic. It's not meant to be funny. It's not to be anything other than it is. Once you have made a child, your life stops. The responsibility of raising that child cannot be abdicated or given up in the delivery room. In other words, once you've delivered the child, you cannot look to the church, the daycare center, the school, the rec center to raise that child. You have now become a parent, and you have to do everything that comes along with parenting. Part of parenting is being a role model. Truth be told, the first school is the home. It's not the schoolhouse. The first school is the home. The first teacher is that child's parents, whether it be mom, dad, both mom and dad, mom only, dad only, grandma, aunt, uncle, whomever that is, that's the child's first teacher. The role is a serious role that we have to take with the responsibility. For our children, we need to have conversations with them when they are little, like 1 and 2, not just baby talk. We need to be talking and having conversation with them. We need to be instilling reading in them. And it's not because I'm a passionate and avid reader that I'm always trying to encourage people to read. I know for a fact reading is the foundation for every other subject. And that's no shade on any other subject. That's not trying to be critical or judgmental about any other subject. The bottom line is if you don't read and comprehend, you're not going to do well in the other subjects. So even if you say, well, Mr. Medley, 2 + 2 = 4. Yes, but most of the time when your child receives math now, they're getting word problems. They need to be able to read those word problems, comprehend the word problems, and then think, what do I need to do? So the more you can help your child think, the more you can help them with critical thinking, the more you can help them with vocabulary. Because going back to we were talking about using the N word, talking about calling each other nigga. Most of the time when you get a child or a parent that the only thing they do is swear or say curse words because they have a limited vocabulary. And a lot of time with the boys that I'm working with, that's exactly what I tell them. When I hear them cursing and using foul language, I say, now you know your vocabulary is bigger than that. So you need to expose them. You need to expose them to words. You need to help them understand the power of words. You need to expose them, if you can, to as many places and travel and to the library and to Barnes and Noble bookstores and to as many people who are doing different things as you can. And then, as I said, you have to model for them. I've had students who literally was suspended from school for cursing. When they come back, the parent now curses me out as the principal with them sitting there. And I have to say, ma'am, you do understand that's what he just got suspended for. So you have to model for them the behavior. You have to set some standards. You have to expect excellence. You have to let your child know. As a matter of fact, this is going to sound odd. You can be friendly with your child, but that does not matter. That does not mean you have to be their friend. There's a difference between being a friend and being friendly. You are the parent. Again, I'm speaking as a principal. This is my 25th year, the start of my 25th year. Out of those 25 years, this is my 15th year as an administrator. No, excuse me. This is my 20th year as administrator. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen parents who have purchased a cell phone and pay for the service for a fourth grader who will tell me they cannot take that cell phone away. They cannot take that video game away. You need to set some boundaries with your children. Their children, your parents. You're going to bed at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You're not going to stay up and play video games till 4 o'clock in the morning and then fall asleep in class. So, I mean, it's like you said earlier about common sense. It's some things that you would think is common sense, but common sense in many instances is not too common.
Indeed, indeed. I want to get to a question that one of our audience members asked, and I think is a powerful question. They ask, what strategy, excuse me, what strategies do you use to support students dealing with trauma, behavior challenges, and emotional needs?
When the school was originally designed, we actually had two guidance counselors. Now we're talking about a huge school. We're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 900,000 child school will have one guidance counselor. We're talking about my school that had 50 to 100 kids. We had two guidance counselors. We just lost because of right sizing. We just lost one of those counselors this year. But the counselor that I did wind up keeping is an expert in social emotional learning. She is phenomenal. I mean, in terms of those things that you just described, she's licensed and trained in. We do a lot of work on social emotional learning at the school. You were talking metrics earlier. We actually, social SEL is one of our metrics. We're also a restorative practices school. I have been, since my time in the district, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been the principal in the district who suspended the most kids at my larger schools. I mean, highest suspension rate in the district. One school I was in, we were considered a consistently dangerous school. The Passaic County put us under an action plan because we were deemed persistently dangerous. Okay. School I'm in now, this past year, had like maybe 3 suspensions. Okay. So we do a lot of work in that area before I mean, suspension is kind of like last because what we're really trying to get away from is the school to prison pipeline. We're trying to get away from a child thinking just because they did something wrong, automatically they're going to be outcast. See, this is the dynamics that come up, especially particularly in an urban community, particularly when you're dealing with Black and Spanish kids. You talk traumatization. This is one of the issues I have with teachers and principals being moved around. For many of our kids, school is the safe place. Some of our kids, the fact that they've been out for 2 months went through withdrawal. They're going to be so glad to come back on Thursday. They don't know what to do because school is their safe place. So the strategies that we use, one, we do a lot of work on social emotional learning. We do a lot of work in terms of restorative practice. But like with restorative practices, the way that works is whatever the infraction was, we get everybody around the table, we get a chance to talk it out. And we don't leave until everybody is made whole. That whatever it was that caused the break, everybody comes back to the table, and this is adults included, and are made whole when they walk away. What this does for the child is make them understand, yeah, I was wrong, but they get a chance to be accountable. They have an opportunity to get out why they did what they did. The person who was now, the infractor was against, they get a chance to hear, okay, because we're doing a lot of work with empathy. My teachers in the summer for July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we had to do 3 days of professional development. Most of that I geared toward empathy to help them understand when a child comes, I need you to put yourself in that child's shoes. I need you to put yourself in those parents' shoes. You can't take everything personally. Parent come in, they start yelling and cursing and carrying on. It's not against you. They've had a bad day. They might be having a bad life. I get called in here because my son did something that he wasn't supposed to be doing. Now I got to deal with them teachers. So I need you to show some empathy. It's not about you. I'm not saying you have to excuse it, but understand why they might be coming at you that way. And that might shape your reaction rather than you immediately get into argument mode. Okay, you know what, Miss Such? Because I always tell people this, and people look at me, they're like, wow, I don't understand how you do it. Somebody can come in amped up, hyped up, excited, cursing, kicking and screaming. And my goal is that when they leave my office, they're going to go out smiling. 9 times out of 10 times, I get that. 9 out of 10, they look like, how did you do that? They came in here cursing, kicking, hollering, and screaming, and they leave your office smiling. We were talking about OGs earlier. Our OG, his grandson go to my school. Come here. Wouldn't say a word. Dark glasses, wouldn't say a word. I said, yo, man, come in my office one day. Came in, we started chatting and talking. He was telling me everything was going on. After that, he had no, yo, man, how's it going? Okay. So the strategies we have, there's multiple. They're multifaceted. We got the empathy. We try to understand. We build relationships. They have to trust us because you got to build trust. If a child is going through something, and we let them know, if you could tell us anything you want with the exception of you trying to hurt somebody or you trying to hurt yourself, then there are things legally we have to do. It's not even on us. By law, if you say this, we got to do that. Anything short of that, they know they got a safe haven. They got a place they can tell people what's going on. They can cry if they want to. They can do whatever they want to do. So there's a lot of things, and again, it goes back to our size because it's very intimate. I know every one of my 50 or 55 kids by first name. If they see me anywhere, and I see them anywhere, I know them by first name.
I think the social emotional learning piece is so crucial because number one, me as a man now, I'm still learning about emotional intelligence for myself, and most importantly, emotional management for myself, right? In terms of day-to-day stuff, under pressure, quote unquote stress, marriage. And so these things your boys are learning at such an early stage, they'll be able to use those tools later on in life and other areas of life. That's the first thing. The second thing, as me being someone from the streets, there are so many of us who are in prison because of lack of just emotional control. Somebody stepped on them, they were triggered in some way, and because of their lack of, and some people say it's ego and everything. Again, we have to live by a certain code and not, when we're living that lifestyle, right? But it all, to me, goes back to emotional intelligence and emotional management. So you're not only educating these boys, you're saving their lives.
It's correct. And again,
And empowering them in other relationships, children, right? They'll have children one day. So emotional intelligence and emotional management with their future children, with their future spouses. Even like I know people that choke their bosses up. Their boss says something crazy to them for coming work late, and they choke them up and get locked up or get fired. So there's this emotional, so that social emotional piece is so crucial. And I know it's a big thing. What I mean by big thing is like you can't describe it in a sentence. But if you can break down what does that mean, social emotional learning, what is that?
exactly what you said, your opportunity to be in touch and in control of your emotions. Everything, and this is what we get into with them, everything does not have to come down to fists. Everything does not have to, you may think that the only way to solve something is through fighting, but it's not. We get a chance to teach that thing. We give them other strategies to use other than fighting. When you came in as a guest, they connected with you. I mean, I've been doing guest speakers prior to COVID, prior to the pandemic. We had 1 to 2, 3 guest speakers in there a week from, and I'm gonna, and again, I have to say what I say because it's not about racism. It's not about being racist. Being pro-black does not mean I'm anti-white. Okay. So the fact that the majority of my guest speakers are people who look like them, it is because they need to see people who look like them who are doing it. Because what happens is, what puts in their minds, hey, if that can happen for him, hey, I think I can do that too. Where I'm going with this is when you came in, they connected with you in a different way. Your story, for whatever reason, resonated with them in a different way than just about. And I've had pilots and lawyers and preachers and business administrators and I mean, from all walks of life. They connected with you in a different way. They said it. It wasn't, this is not me saying it. This was them saying it because I went into the classroom and they were having a discussion about you. All right. Some of the things that you said, they remembered. I had told you, you were the first speaker I ever had come in there, and you said something about stay with their mother. Whenever you did that piece and you talk about, I said, that's the first time I ever heard a guest speaker. I say it to them. This is the first time I ever, you came in and shared with them how you cry. Like, it's all right, bro. See, that's the type thing that my kids are getting that some kids around the district may or may not be getting. All right. And because it's in a smaller and a more intimate setting, it's not like an auditorium of 500 kids. You're talking a room with 50 kids. They get a chance to really hear it and take it in. We do a lot of that kind of talk there. They don't get just the ABCs, one, two, threes. We do a lot of life lessons there because our intent is to make them better men, better employees, better husbands, better fathers, better people, better humans. That is the intent as we're working with these boys.
And you know, and when I tell the boys and even other men that it's okay to cry, I think one thing that resonates with them is because I'm not saying it in a soft way. I'm a very masculine man. Like, I'm not the type of man to be like, tune in, tap into your femininity. I ain't it with none of that. So they're hearing a man saying it in a masculine way. Like, listen, it's okay. You know, it doesn't take away from your strength and power. And I'm not telling them to be soft either.
Correct.
And that's a part of my message on purpose, because I feel like there's been I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but an agenda to effeminize our young boys. I want to talk about self-esteem, because that's something that I hear you when I went to the school, you know, and I had the pleasure to speaking at this amazing young men's leadership academy 3 times, one unofficially. Just I was there and I was like, okay, let's get it. So I noticed when I visited your school and spoke at your school, something that you emphasize is self-esteem. Tell us about that.
Correct. Paterson is an urban district. Many people, when they hear the word Paterson, immediately go to Sodom and Gomorrah. When you roll that down and okay, I'm already thinking that about Paterson. Then when you roll about what many people, not everybody, but many feel about black people. Then when you take it down another notch to how they feel not only about black people, but black males or Hispanic males, right? So we're constantly trying to help them understand this is how the game is played. This is what I was saying earlier. You're getting at a very young age the rules of the game, how the game is played. If we can tell you how the game is played, then we can help you with strategies on how to play the game and possibly win the game. A part of the whole game is making you feel like you're nothing. Because of where you're raised, you're coming from Sodom and Gomorrah. Can any good thing come out of Paterson? Yes, they can. Okay. Because you're African American or Hispanic male, clearly nothing, right? So we're constantly uplifting. We're constantly helping them with their self-esteem and to make them, you are somebody, you are special. Don't you ever allow anyone to make you feel as if you're less because you're dark skinned. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're less because you come from one of our Hispanic countries or you're Hispanic. Don't let anyone make you feel because you're coming out of Paterson, New Jersey, that you're less than somebody who might be coming out of Ridgewood or who might be coming out of Alpine or who might be coming out of anywhere else in the world. You are just as good as. Now, we try to help them understand you got to do your part. You cannot feed or continuously feed into the stereotypes. So we help them understand what the stereotypes are. All right, these are the stereotypes. Now, either you perpetuate that or you debunk it. We're into the debunking. I'm into the debunking. There are certain things I'll do just because you said I couldn't do it.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. So I know a lot of people who work in education, you know, and a constant complaint, for lack of a better word, is the lack of resources. Every teacher I know, and I'm not exaggerating, every teacher I know tells me that they have to come out of their own pocket for stuff in the classroom or to bring in supplies and resources. How are you dealing with that?
I understand where they're coming from, and in some instances, but that hasn't necessarily been my plight. Other schools I've been in, because sometimes there's this connection between money and achievement. They don't necessarily. I've been in schools where I've, over a 3-year period, had extra $6 million than the other schools in the district. Going back to the metric of standardized test score, it did nothing for that. It depends on what they're defining as resources, because every school has a budget. Every school has a local budget. Depending on the size of your school determines the size of your budget. You and I could go over to Willowbrook or Paramus or somewhere out in Morris County and spend my local budget at the mall. That's because I only have 50 kids. So therefore my budget is going to be smaller. there are other ways to get additional resources because there are grants, depending again on where you fall out academically on the standardized test that will allow you to get additional money from federal, so forth and so on. So it depends on what resources they're talking about, but no teacher should ever have to buy basic supplies. No teacher should have to buy, I mean, if they want to out of their pocket, they want to go to Walmart or whatever and buy additional notebooks to get to the kids, that's on them. But as far as the operation of a school, no teacher should have to come out their pocket for that. Right now, this year, and each year that since I've been, this is my 6th year at YMLA. Each year I've gotten to, like right now, we got a closet full of makerspace materials, hands-on project materials. So the closet is full. My teachers will not be able to say that this year. I can't speak for teachers around the district, but I know for a fact my teachers will have no excuses in terms of resources. Now, it may not be the resources they want per se, but we are resourced up the wazoo.
Yeah. I have a question for you. This is from one of our audience members, which can be a controversial question. So there's this, and I've heard it before, there's this, how do I say? I'll say it like this. So what they want to know is it true that some of our black boys are being labeled in an unfair way because districts or schools get funding because from having students that are labeled. Now, I'm not in academia, so I don't know how to ask that properly, but is that true?
This is my personal opinion, but I think it's beyond my personal opinion. It's like the way our society works in general. There is money in failure. There is money. There's a certain, like if you look and research what they used to be called the bell curve, all that kind of stuff. There's a certain percentage you got to keep on this side. A certain percentage is going to reach the apex, and then a certain percentage you'll have on the other side. You have to keep that, and it's wrong because I mean it's almost as if once you get the kids doing what you claim you wanted them to do, you'll change the metrics. So now it starts all over. Wait a minute. If the metric was academics, we got to the academics. Now we got there, you changed it so that we got to go back to the failure piece again.
You brought up the school to prison pipeline. For people out there who don't know what that is, what is that and how are you combating that?
Everything that I've been talking about since we started the show is combating that. First off, what it is where you have a system that it starts going back to the self-esteem thing and everything else. You get into this cycle of every time. First, okay, go back to the labeling. And this is why our school is important as well in terms of you have groups that are not accustomed to dealing with other groups. There are some things that are cultural. African American boy, whatever, may play, learn, do things in a different way. When you get to another culture, that's not the way they do it. So they automatically assume something's wrong with that child. So therefore, he must have a learning disability. So bam, he's labeled SPED. He's labeled learning disabled. He's like, now that puts you on a whole different track than if you're not labeled that. Right? Now I take that in. I think, well, they label me because this is what happens. People live up to their labels, right? If you've labeled me as, for lack of a better term, stupid, or if you've labeled me as I have a learning disability, guess what? I'm going to perform as if, because this is what you told me, and I took that in. So therefore, this is what I'm going to do. So when you have a child and there's nothing wrong with him other than the fact that that's in his culture, and now because it's not in your culture and that's not what you're accustomed to, you've now made that child feel like he's learning disabled. That took him down a totally different path, which now, as I'm learning disabled, so guess what? I find myself getting into trouble. And before you know it, now I'm dealing with the law. Before you know it, I've gone, I mean, for the most part, at an early age, might not even finish school. I'm dealing with it. One of the things we try to do, our boys, is everything in our power. Don't you do anything that's going to get your name on a police computer. Don't you. Oh man, don't you do anything that's going, because once your name gets in there, anything you do beyond that, your name going to pop again. I've had a couple of students that got themselves in trouble with the law, and they know what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, you do need to understand that went down on you at 12 or 13 or 14, but you do something at 25, guess what? It's going to pop again. So back to like us being restorative practices. The whole suspension cycle creates in the mind that every time I do something wrong, I'm getting kicked out of society. Prison is taking you out of society. Okay. When you go to jail, when you go to prison, that's society's way of saying, we don't want you in our society. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand accountability. I understand consequences. I understand all of that.
Some people don't belong in society.
Okay, right. So if every time child does something in school, the immediate reaction is suspension, that's setting up in his mind every time I do something wrong. All right. It also sets up in society's mind. Every time they do something wrong, I'm going to remove them. And the gradation of wrong really doesn't matter. The infraction, whether it's a tiny infraction or whether it's murder, a huge infraction, doesn't matter. So now, rather than the story that we've always been told, get a good education, get a good job, this, that, and the other, you don't get a chance to do that. You don't get your education, you don't get a good job, and now you wind up in prison. So that's what we mean by the school to prison pipeline. Like it's direct. I mean, I heard it said this morning that, and I've heard it over the years, that the projection for how many prisons that we're going to need 20, 30 years down the line is based on 3rd and 4th grade test scores, reading levels now.
I'm going to tell you something that's real. This is a true story. I was in science class, Eastside High School, and the teacher told we were acting up, bugging out, acting crazy in class. And the teacher just slammed something. I forgot. He slammed something, made a loud noise. And he said, don't you know there's a room, don't you know there's a smoke-filled room filled with white men planning the future of your children. Not even planning my future, planning the future of my children. Now, the science teacher said white men. I just want to put that out there. That's not me saying anything about that, but I think that it's so powerful that it's systematic in a way where you can actually calculate and predict the future of, mind you, we were high school students.
Correct.
And you're telling me that they're planning the future for my children based on how I behave in this classroom?
Correct. Your science teacher was right. Now, this is the thing. There's different ways to motivate and inspire.
Mr. Bornstein, that was his name.
Oh, I had Mr. Bornstein as well.
He's the one that told me.
All right. He was my earth science teacher. I had him for earth science. All right. That's an example of just how powerful what a teacher says, good or bad, can have on students. All right. Going back to the labeling. A teacher could say something to you that for the rest of your days will make you feel like you nobody. Or a teacher can say something for the rest of your days that will make you feel like a king, like the world. All right. So again, we have to be very mindful in education. And what's really crazy, because you mentioned a key word, which goes back to the money question and everything else probably we've been talking about, systemic. Most of these things, we're talking about conspiracy theorists, in which I probably consider myself one. Most of these things that occur is systemic. Now, I know this is not about politics, and I know this, but you help me understand. If Barack Obama had 34 counts, do you think he'd be getting the opportunity to do what this other man is doing with 34 charges? Okay. And I'll just leave it at that, because if I go down that road, we'll be here the rest of the night. But at the same time, a lot of this stuff is systemic. And that's the other thing that we're battling, and I have the opportunity to have these conversations with the children to help them understand the system. There was before I went into education, I worked in corporate America. One of my assignments in corporate America was the one that really I knew where I had to be in education and teaching. Was I had the opportunity to travel the country doing what we call diversity training. There was an exercise in that where we took the big Post-it stickies around a room like this, and we put different categories. Black man, Black woman, white man, white woman, Asian woman, Jewish man, Jewish woman, Hispanic man, Hispanic woman, jocks. I mean, we all around the room, and we would tell the participants, because we give them the little yellow stickies then and say, all right, listen, this is the deal. You don't have to believe what you're writing on that sticky, but it's something you heard or you've seen on TV or what have you. We want you to write down what you've heard about each one of these groups and just go stick them up on the wall. True, no matter where I went with the country, I could have took the yellow stickies with me and just put them up on the walls myself. No matter where I went in the country, the same words were used for the categories. I'll use jocks just to be safe. Under the word jock would always be a sticky that said dumb, right? Under the word jock would be something else. Okay. So the folks in the room who were athletes, we'd have them talk like, you were a jock. And they would say, and this is going back to the labeling thing. People thought we were dumb, so guess what? We acted dumb. No, we weren't. We were good students. We were just, but because everybody thought being a jock meant you were dumb, we acted dumb. People tend to rise to the level of their label.
Yeah, I'll tell you another personal story, and this is real. Prior to getting knowledge of self, I thought I was just meant to be a street dude, a dude from the block. Like, what else is there to do? And once I got knowledge of self, or was introduced to knowledge of self and started to learn about the great things that my ancestors did, it opened me up to a world of possibilities. And as I'm sitting here telling you that, I'm like it sounds so simple. Like, well, you should know you should do more. But people don't really get there's like a ceiling of perspective that exists if you don't see it, hear it, or was taught it. And one thing that's special about the YMLA is that you also introduce them into culture and self and self empowerment and knowledge of self. And you sit right in front of me, you're wearing a dashiki. At the school, you walk around with a djembe, which is a drum. Djembe is the African word for drum, to get the students' attention. Talk about that.
It's all connected. And again, like it's interesting that you were just talking about, knowledge of self. It's interesting that when you change your name, you change it to True. The one thing that we hear, and I know words are powerful, but the one thing that we hear more than anything else is our names, right? Whatever, and I always encourage people to understand and find out the definition of your name. Like there's most names, unless it's just somebody jumble some letters together, most names have a definition. When my wife at the time was pregnant with my daughters, the entire 9 months we spent going through the name book and going through the definition of names. My full name, here in the United States, we call it our government name, if you will, is Marc Allen Medley. All right. Marc means warrior. Allen means handsome. Medley means can do many things. I tell people all the time, I'm a handsome warrior who can do many things. All right. Because that's literally what my name means. All right. The culture piece, because one, there are people out there who are trying to make it as if no one else contributed anything to society or to the world with the exception of the dominant group. That's going again to what we're saying in terms of debunking myths. So I need them to see that it's all right if you want to wear something like this. That in Africa, rhythm and messaging was done through the djembe or the drum. All right.
And great civilizations were built.
That's exactly right. So we get into all that. You need to understand, like, you have a group of people that are trying to and matter of fact, right now they're trying to take it all backwards. Any progress that we have made, they're trying to take it backwards. If you look at Project 2025, that's exactly what Project 2025 is trying to do. When you're talking about banning of books, I mean, information, education, knowledge is through books, and you're trying to take that out. So going back to your question in terms of culture, yes, we are trying to help people be proud, because this is my thing, and I say it all the time. If you're Italian and you want to be the proudest Italian going, I'm happy for you. Just don't try to make me feel like I'm nothing because I want to be the best African American going. Going back to what I was saying, because I am pro-Black does not mean I am anti-white. So if you want to be the best, whatever you are, that is fine. Just don't try to stop on us if we want to be the best at who we are. So we're constantly, I told you earlier, on Monday mornings, we do libation ceremony. The students have an opportunity. We have a plant. We take the water. We take a water bottle. They have the opportunity to say whatever's on their heart, whether they're disappointed, whether they're happy, whether they're thankful, whatever they are. Because we do a big thing on gratitude. That's another thing we couldn't do in the big schools. We do a big focus on gratitude. Most of the time when the boys come up, they're telling what they're thankful for. I'm thankful my mom got out the hospital. I'm thankful for my dad. I'm thankful that the Giants won. I'm thankful that they do a lot on gratitude. Every now and again, they may come up and it's something that they're, disappointed about. They'll say that, going back to the emotions again. After they say what they say, the entire building goes, Ashe, 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 as we're putting the water into the plant. That's how we kick our week off on Mondays, okay? On Wednesdays, we have Drop Everything and Read Wednesday.
Just want to add on that what he's speaking about that he does on Mondays, libation is an African ritual.
Correct.
That goes back all the way. If you research Kemet, one of our oldest ones, we have civilizations older than Kemet, but there's Kush, where so libation, pouring water and acknowledging our ancestors
Correct.
and being gratitude, all of that is African ritual. I just wanted to say that for those who may not familiar with.
No, I'm
with
glad
that.
you did. I'm glad. Matter of fact, thank you for joining me because it's the acknowledgement of the ancestors. Absolutely right. Yes. All right. On Wednesdays, we do Drop Everything and Read Wednesday. From 8:15 to 8:30, everybody in the building. I don't care who walks in there. If Joe Biden walked in between 8:15 and 8:30, or Kamala Harris walked in between 8:15 and 8:30, they would have to sit down and read a book. The building drops silent because I want to emphasize the importance of reading.
I love that. I always say, you've heard me say when I spoke to your students, books saved my life.
On Fridays, we have what's called House Fridays. We broke them into houses. And normally when the kids sit together, they sit by grade level. The houses are across grade level. So each house is made up of third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, and eighth graders. When we put the house concept in place, the eighth graders at that time named the houses. And we said, whatever you name it, that's what the house is going to be. I gave them full choice. There were some names I would have named. I thought they would have picked. They didn't. There were 6 houses. Latimer House, Carver House, Ali House, Chavez House, Ali House, and X House. Each one of them have a saying, X is by any means necessary. And they have to shout those out. They have to shout out their slogan on Friday mornings. Whatever house I call, if I call X House, I want to hear as loud as you can, by any means necessary. If I call Ali House, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. If I call Latimer House, we are the light of the world. If I call Carver House, Mandela House. If I call Mandela House, education is the key to changing the world. Whatever their slogan is for whatever it's tied to. And they named them, all right? And the houses, again, going back to how boys think and operate, the houses compete against each other for points. So they can do something throughout the school day or throughout the day that can earn their house points. And the house with the highest points at a certain period of time will get a certain incentive.
And just in case you didn't catch it, those houses are named after people that look like them.
That is correct. And they chose them, because I would have had a Martin Luther King house. They ain't have Martin. They chose who they wanted, and we kept them that way. The house names have stayed the same. So we're doing all kinds of different things that we might not get a chance to do with a larger setting.
I know I told you this when I spoke at the school and saw how the program and how the students perform and just everything in general. I told you, if I had a son, I have 2 sons,
Right.
but my oldest son, he's already 19. But Omari, who's 2, when he gets old enough, we'll have to, unless if I'm not in Jersey. If I'm in Jersey, he will be attending your school. I already spoke to my wife about it.
All right.
So if you can just tell the people, I want you to flex a little bit. Right? I want you to talk about some of your accolades, because I want them to know who they got in front of. So you're a principal. That's great. And that alone is an amazing accomplishment. But I want you to talk about some of your accolades, some of the things you've accomplished in education and whatnot, and also how they can find you and find out more about the program.
It's interesting. Accolades, and I can be considered modest and I can be considered arrogant, either way. But I tell people all the time, whenever I share my experiences, it's not that I'm bragging. One, they are what they are. I've really had them. I'm not making them up. They're real life experience. I have been blessed to have experiences in so many different arenas. You talked about custodians earlier. When I was in undergrad From 1979 to 1985, I was custodian at Eastside High School. So people tease me all the time, you went from custodian to principal? Yes, but it was a whole lot in between in terms of, as I said, I did 15 years in corporate America. I worked for AT&T. Wonderful assignment. I was in their marketing department, got a chance to travel the world, meet all type of famous people. It wasn't doing for me on the inside. You were talking about true to self, all the perks and accolades in corporate America, it wasn't doing anything for me on the inside. So I left AT&T in 2000 and came into education. But not only do I have education and corporate experience, I have religious experience, I have military experience, I have fraternal experience because I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And one of the things that I tell the boys is that regardless of whatever you get into, always make your target at being the best. You may or may not get there, but you will get further than you would have gotten had you not making the best the goal. So I'm saying all that to say, in each one of those organizations, I've been the best of the best in it. In Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, I've been Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Man of the Year. When I was in the military, I was Soldier of the Year. As a teacher, I was Teacher of the Year. On my radio show, because I also host a radio show that I'm in my 23rd season, I've had Talk Show Host of the Year. So whatever I have been in, I've always shot to be the best at it and usually have obtained it. Just most recently, I was listed in Who's Who Across America or Around America, whatever it's called, in their edition of Who's Who, Marquis Who's Who. I mean, trophies and plaques up the wazoo, but I don't do what I do for trophies and plaques. Right? I do what I do to help make life better for others, and as a result of that, wind up getting recognized. So I don't do it. My end goal is not for the recognition. My end goal is to make life better for somebody else, and because I'm doing that, I wind up getting recognized for it.
Love it. You've mentioned numerous books and the power of reading. What is your favorite book and why?
This pendant that I'm wearing, this one right here, because I'm wearing 3, this is called the Breastplate Star of Ethiopia. This pendant became famous because it was Haile Selassie had awarded this to Adam Clayton Powell Jr. The reason I'm bringing that up is because that question was asked to Adam Clayton Powell Jr. as a congressman, what was your favorite? And he laughed at the interview question and said, I can't answer that. That's just like asking which one of my kids are my favorite kids. I have read so many books and I have been poured into by so many different authors and so many different books that I can't honestly say which one is a favorite because they all connect and they all come together. You heard me say I'm reading Eric Thomas, right? I'm reading one. I have in my iPad, I have close to 2,000 books in there. All right, I'm reading one of Eric's books now. I think it's called UOU. I think that's the name.
That's the second one that he wrote.
Okay, all right. So that's a long-winded answer to...
Or third, excuse me.
Right. No, that's a long-winded answer to it would be very hard for me to pick out an absolute favorite because all of them served a purpose.
And I understand that because if you were to ask me what was my favorite book in the early 2000s, you're going to get a whole different answer than asking me that question now. And they were all part of the evolution of who I am. So I understand.
I've read the Bible, I've read the Quran, I've read the Torah. So even with all of them, I mean, it's just all of them, like you said, they make me who I am.
I love that. I love that. So as far as legacy is concerned, you mentioned how your parents said, don't tarnish the Medley last name, right? What would you like your legacy to be?
There is a song that says, if I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living will not be in vain. I do not want my living to be in vain. I want to be known as someone who helped to make life better for others, someone who had an impact on somebody else's life, someone who would be known as someone could come and say, you know what, had it not been for something you said or did, I might not be where I am right now. If I had not crossed your path, I might not be where I am right now. That's the legacy I want. And going back to what you asked about how people can get in touch with me, my website is my name, marcamedley.com, MarcAmedley.com. I'm Mark with a C, not Mark with a K, but MarcAmedley. If you Google the school, Young Men's Leadership Academy, Paterson Public Schools, or Paterson, New Jersey, our website will come up. Have a wonderful video on there with the gym, with the drum, the djembe, and all that on it. All information about the school. So if you Google Young Men's, because that name is somewhat popular around the country. So if you put in Young Men's Leadership Academy, Paterson Public Schools, or Paterson, New Jersey, you can find me there. Again, my website to all my social media and everything else is marcamedley.com.
Why leadership
Why leadership in terms of me or the school or in general?
in general?
Well, two things. One, in order to be a really good leader, you had to be a really good follower. Leadership and followership go together. Before you can become a really good leader, you need to know how to follow. Secondly, one of the things, and both in my master's program in education and the doctoral program that I'm working on right now, emphasize that who you are as a person is who you will be as a leader. Going back to your knowing yourself, understanding who you are as that person is going to be who you are as a leader. Because there is such a thing as good leaders and bad leaders, right? But who you are, your character, there's a difference between character and reputation, but your character is who you're going to be as a leader.
What's the difference between character and reputation?
Character is who you are. Reputation is who people say you are. So in terms of, folks can be like, true is great, true is great, true is great. But true know who true is. True know whether true is great or not. So it's, like you said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, so forth and so on. The true you, you can fool people with reputation. But the true you, that's your character.
Yeah. What message do you have for young men that are listening now? So I have a son that's 19, right? And then we also have some men that are younger than that who listen to this show. So if you can summarize a message for the young and the older men, so to speak, what message would you have for them?
My message would be, one, you need to understand you come from greatness. All right. As we say with the boys at school, you never, and going back to what my mom and dad were talking about, think for yourself. You never ever allow anybody else to define you. Whatever it is that you put your mind to, that in your heart, your mind, your spirit, your soul, that you feel that you were put here on the planet to do, you go for it. You don't have to be limited. I'm not mad at somebody who was an accountant from the time they was 25 to 75. I'm also not mad at somebody like myself who have done many. I've been a jet engine mechanic, I've been a custodian, I've been a marketing manager, I've been a principal, I've been a teacher, I've been a professor at the college, I've been a radio talk show host. So I'm not mad at somebody who does many things or who can say, you know what, this is not working for me, I want to do that. You do what you feel in your heart, mind, and soul that you've been put on this planet to do, and you shoot for the best at being it. I don't care what color you are. I don't care your ethnicity. I don't care your sexual preference. I don't care your gender. I don't care. Whatever it is that you feel like you've been put on the planet to do, you go for it. You get in touch with yourself. You get in touch with God or the universe or Abba or whatever name you want to call, Jehovah, whatever name you want to call. You connect with that. You do the best. You connect. And because when you do that, the right people will start connecting with you. All right. Always, as much as possible, accentuate the positive. Don't fall into pity parties. Don't get into, oh, why always me? Don't get into, oh, I can't do this because I grew up. If you happen to be in a city like Paterson, oh, well, I can't do nothing because look, I grew up in Paterson. Don't get into that mindset. I'm from Paterson. One of the things that drives me is the fact that I've had the many opportunities and been blessed to do everything I've done as a kid growing up from Paterson, New Jersey, on Pearl Street, 2 blocks from Eastside High School. And when you do it, don't ever let anybody tell you, oh, you're not like them. Oh, yes, I'm just like them. You're representing. We were talking about CP. I don't believe in CP. And for those of you who don't know what CP is, we had a good laughing running joke about color people time. They named an entire time on us being late. Go for being the, or shoot for the stars or whatever, however you want to say that. Even if you don't hit it, you will still be higher than you were had you not had that as the goal.
Absolutely. Final question. Why does it seem like other ethnicities, nationalities, let's take the Asian, Indian, Chinese, why does it seem like they thrive or value education more than others? Or what are they doing differently?
Well, all right. Now, this is interesting because I told you that experiment or that exercise that I would do when I was teaching diversity. And it's interesting that when we put the sticky up on the board about age and so forth, smart, education, straight A's. Now, there's a flip side to that. You have very high suicide rate because that pressure is on them. They bring home a B, they're considered like stupid. So it works kind of both ways, but it does come down to, and I've had the experience where I've had kids from other countries come here and outperform students who were born here. And it's because in many of those countries, education was not free. You had to go through so many hoops. And in some of the countries, they made a decision on who could and who could not be educated. You know, like who could go to school and who could not, who was going to work in the field for the rest of the days, and who gets the opportunity to go to school. So when people come here and all they have to do is go, like, you mean, Jimmy, all I have to do is go? That's all you got to do is go. They flourish. So when you combine the fact that when I come to the United States, free public education, that's not the same, and that's not in all countries. This whole free thing, it's not in all countries. My former wife, born in Jamaica, and one of her favorite sayings was, "It's too free here. It's too free." Okay, because they had to pay for their uniforms, they had to pay for their transportation, they had to pay for their books, they had to pay for their clothes, they had to pay for everything, and there was no such thing as government assistance. There was no free lunch. There was no all these different programs that we have in the United States to assist with education. So when folks coming from countries like that come here and the only thing they have to do is go, man, they rocket. They skyrocket. You combined, all you got to do is go with standards at home. There's nothing holding you back.
Mr. Medley, the work that you are doing, I cannot say with words how powerful it is. And when I say you, I mean you, your staff, the intention, the purpose, the mission, everything is just, I don't know if you even know how important and valuable it is. You are working with the future of our community, the future of our people, the future of our planet. And you are assisting with not only empowering them, not only educating them, but making them better men. So, as a man, as someone who comes from the community, as someone who lives here and has children here and everything else, just know that you are appreciated and you are valued. And I am telling those students, if they watch this, they really are privileged. Seriously. So listen, you are appreciated and you are valued.
True, I thank you for this opportunity, and I thank you for what you do as well. The message, in some instances, comes across differently from someone who's had the experiences we keep telling them not to get into. It's one thing for me to say, don't do that and go to jail because I ain't never been to jail. It's another thing for somebody that's been there to say, this is why you don't want to go. So what you do is equally important as to what I do. It all works together. And I thank you for the opportunity to tell our story.
Listen, if you know anyone that will find value out of this conversation, share this episode with them. And don't forget, subscribe. Let's get it.